to the world. Subscribe now to the Hot 97 YouTube channel. It's Ebro in the Morning with Laura Stiles and Rosenberg.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, the woman we are going to have the pleasure to speak to right now goes by the name of Andrea Stewart-Cousins. She is currently the Majority Leader at the New York State level of the Senate. And so this woman right now is being tasked, along with many others that she's working with, to pass a lot of things with regard to police reform while we have the momentum and the support of communities all across the nation. Now, before we get into specific bills you're working on and get granular, can you articulate for us, as someone who has been doing this most of their life, how the tone and temperature and climate has shifted so these changes can be made?
You know, I'd say that this has been the most really incredible groundswell of communities all over. I mean, the world is watching what has happened and what we are doing. And this is nothing I have ever seen before. And you're right. You know, I've been Black all my life, my family, you know, and I have watched, as we all have watched, you know, injustices, you know, police brutality and so on. And it just seemed like it was part of what one had to live through, especially if you were Black or brown. So this momentum is so deep and so vast that there was no way that, since all of these bills, so many of them had been hanging around for years, unable to move, that we were not going to move right now and strike, as they say, while the iron is hot. I know a lot of times, you know, people are in this alone, and we know how that is. I represent, as you know, Westchester County, half of Westchester County. So just so your listening audience understands my district, I have half of Yonkers, 3/4 of White Plains, half of New Rochelle, because of gerrymandering.
Right.
I have Greenburgh, I've got river towns, Dobbs Ferry, Hastings, Irvington, Tarrytown. I have Scarsdale.
Wow.
Okay, that's my district. And it's over 300,000 people in that district. Over the past few days, I have gone to, or have been invited to, or trying to get to, a Black Lives Matter rally in every single district, including Scarsdale.
Wow.
Last week, before I came back up here to Albany, I was in a Hastings on Hudson's Black Lives Matter.
Hastings on Hudson.
Hastings on Hudson.
Go ahead, Hastings on Hudson.
Dobbs Ferry. I was in a blackout with 75% of the audience was white, holding up Black Lives Matter signs.
Now,
okay, and I told them.
Now here's the real question. Where was Ardsley? Was Ardsley out there?
You know, I did not go to Ardsley, but I won't say they didn't have something.
They may have. But
I mean,
and by the way, the reason this is humorous for the audience who doesn't know these nooks and crannies outside of New York City, you know, it is very suburban. The median incomes are probably over 80,000.
Scarsdale is one of the richest zip codes in the country. I mean, it may be the richest zip code in the country.
So that's why we're laughing and being so tongue-in-cheek about it, because this has literally reached every household.
That's exactly right.
How does that make you feel, by the way, when you see that? You know, like all of a sudden to now have this much support from white people, does it strike you?
Peter, you know, I'm glad you asked that, because I was just getting ready to say, you know, I was a county legislator representing part of Yonkers before I went and ran for the Senate. I lost, by the way, as you know, by 18 votes in 2004 when I first ran. But the first place that I went to was Dobbs Ferry, outside of Yonkers, when I was trying to get into the Senate. And I knew that I had to go out of my comfort zone. And I know I was asking them to go out of their comfort zone by considering the first woman to represent them as a senator and a woman of color. And so, you know, once they gave me that chance. I've always understood that my district is so diverse. I'm representing everybody, and I'm representing, certainly a lot of people who are not as melanin endowed as me. So when I got back there over, to this Black Lives Rally that I was at over the weekend, I told them that, when I came up, I knew that I was representing you and representing me, representing a whole lot of
Representing
different
us.
all of us. I said, but this is the first time that I've ever felt like you are representing me. And that's really what it's about. This is an incredible moment. And so for my Senate, the assembly has always been, the people's house. There's more of them. They represent less people than senators do. For us, they represent around 175,000. Senators represent over 300,000. In addition to that, like I said, our districts are, obviously are just bigger. And the only way that the Senate majority became a majority, and I know I talked about this when I was there before, is because we were able to pick up seats outside of New York City, in the suburbs, in Long Island, upstate, where they never had Democrats before. So for the first year and a half, we've been doing some incredible things, that nobody had thought we would ever do. But I personally did not believe we would have the opportunity to do something like repealing 50A and the number of things we do, body cameras and special prosecutor codification. I carried special prosecutor 5 years ago. And the Republicans were in charge. The governor did do an executive order, but we're actually making it happen now.
So let's dig in. First of all, 50A, which this will provide. This is the big one that provides the people the ability to see the disciplinary records of officers.
That's right.
The police and their lobbying efforts and their political power, sometimes bullying, veiled threats, you know how the police union moves, was always clearly not wanting us to see this because this would force them to hold their coworkers, some of their friends, accountable for their behavior.
Right. And one of the main things that they would fight against is that they would say that, it's dangerous to have their personal information out, which we all agree. We don't need your home address. We just need to make sure we know what is happening within the police department.
Well, not only that, but we might need you to lose your job.
Hello.
You are about to lose your job.
So what exactly happened with that? Because I saw it in the paper that it passed. All the Republicans voted against it.
Yes. And 40, my entire conference voted for it. And again, if we had been having this conversation 2 weeks ago, I wouldn't have been able to know really what was going to happen 3 weeks ago. But yesterday, my members voted unanimously, despite, the back and forth. People don't want unsubstantiated. They don't want this. They don't want that. And, here's the reality. If you, and we know, we've seen this with so many, you say Chauvin, but we know there's so many who have been accused of excessive force, and it's unsubstantiated. They're accused of all these things. It's unsubstantiated. But we know we need a right to know who is constantly being accused of this stuff. And, we know that once, they're on blast, we're going to have to make sure, now that we've got an office that can look into patterns and practices that we'll be passing today, that even if somebody doesn't want to do it internally among the police, there'll be an opportunity to challenge what's going on and really get rid of, bad cops.
The next thing I wanted to, this Law Enforcement Misconduct Investigative Office.
Yeah.
Currently, we live in a world where we often hear from the police and they investigate themselves.
Right.
And when people investigate themselves, usually they want to make sure that they don't set a precedent for more investigations to come after. So they're going to figure out some wiggle room to make sure that they don't really have to do anything other than maybe some light disciplinary action and keep it to themselves. What does this law enforcement misconduct investigative office that is going to be created actually do?
Well, that's exactly the point of knowing, as I said, if you've got somebody who's got, some kind of history of being investigated internally for whatever the thing is, this office will be able to look at what's going on, look at the records, look at the policy, and be able to investigate outside of the police.
And who will be responsible for? Will this be at the Attorney General? So this will be currently Tish James's office will handle this.
That's right.
And then there's the crime of aggravated strangulation.
Chokehold.
The chokehold. So this at the state level will ban chokeholds.
That's right. You can't do that. You can't have chokeholds. You can't put some knee on somebody's neck. None of that. You can't do it. If you do it and you cause serious injury, you cause death, you've committed a crime. It's a Class C felony. The minimum is 3.5 years. The maximum is 15. And, the people will say, well, the police ban chokeholds within their own ranks. And this guy, Pantaleo did it anyway, and nothing happened. And that's the point, because they had some kind of policy, but now we have a law.
And I think that right there, that statement is useful for people to learn.
Yeah.
If just policy within a police precinct does not stand up or is useful in a court of law when you're trying to convict someone of a murder and actually go after them to serve time. So police being able to say, oh, well, we banned it. What does that actually mean when a lawyer is trying to come after a cop for murdering somebody using something that's been banned? There's no legal precedent. This sets as law. Am I comprehending it right?
You're comprehending it excellently. That sets as law, so that now when you have a grand jury or something, the instructions to the jurors will be, this is the law, this is what happened, what do you think?
Right.
And that's very, very different from, police policy or any, even our own internal policies. You don't drink coffee on Friday. Okay, nobody's gonna,
how are you actually gonna reprimand somebody if there's not a law?
Exactly. So that's why so much of even this ability to record. You've seen so many people who are recording things like this 17-year-old girl did with George Floyd's murder. But sometimes you're in an environment and some cop will say, give me that, or you can't have that. Well, you know what? Now there's a law, so you can't do that.
It's crazy because as I'm reading this, I automatically thought it's my right. You know what I mean? It's my right to record. But I've seen plenty of police officers saying, put the phones away. Pushing you out of the way, covering it, using their flashlights to blind you.
And you're intimidated. They're the cop.
Right.
So now you're like, oh no, you have a right to do it. Like you said, some of these things are like kind of common sense, right? You would think this is my right. You would think.
But if it's not established as law,
yes,
you can't defend yourself in a court of law.
That's exactly.
And furthermore, you can't reprimand them in a court of law if it's not the law.
Exactly. And goes down to the 911 call now, the Amy Cooper's little law. So now
which one is that? I see the right to record. I see the Office of Special Investigations.
That's the 911 false reporting.
It's not listed here. So tell me about the 911 false reporting bill.
Now somebody can't, now it's a problem if you call up and you say, Amy and
Cooper,
Cooper, now you say, oh, there's this black person and this brown person. They're threatening me if they, find that to be false. It's against the law.
So you could be tried. And so in Amy Cooper's case, people wanted her to be charged.
That's
There's
right.
no established law.
Yeah, they would have a right of action to sue Amy and take her through the system.
And she could actually then face criminal penalties for that.
Yes.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all these laws that we've been discussing have passed?
Yeah. Well, today we will be passing the special prosecutor's piece, and as well as the investigative piece with the attorney general. So we have passed the chokehold, we passed the right to record, we passed repealing 50A. We have done tremendous, again, in honor of George Floyd and all of the Breonnas, the Georges, all of the folks who have been
Mike
through.
Brown, Eric Garner.
Eric Garner. I don't, so we don't even want to start counting because there's just too many names and too many. I was thinking about Amadou Diallo.
Yes.
We
brought up Abner Louima today.
Yeah, it goes on and on
And then
on.
And then a listener sent me a link to the officer who was in the Abner Louima case who actually assaulted him sexually, and basically they was using a broomstick on Abner Louima. He works as a contractor for the city now.
Really?
He's still got a job now, according to this news article.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, I think the days of unaccountability are over. The days of lack of transparency are over. The reality of to be in this moment in time, I'm the first woman leader in the history of New York State. I am with, my counterpart in the Assembly, Speaker Hastie, who's the first Black leader over in the Assembly, to be at this moment in time, having an opportunity to right some wrongs and face racial injustice as leaders in the state, with a governor who's willing to sign these things and has spoken out as it relates to this stuff, is a moment that we can't ignore.
Cuomo wants to be on the right side of history. He ain't been sitting up there for 3 terms as governor to close out on the wrong side. He wants to keep the brand strong.
That's exactly right.
He's making sure.
Do you take how do you take his sort of I won't say like conveniently progressive approach, but Governor Cuomo wasn't necessarily seen as a rebel previously and really fighting for a lot of these issues previously, and post-COVID, now that he seems to be a man of the people, he seems to be taking a different tact a little bit, no?
Well, again, we began this conversation like how everything kind of is different. And I look at the COVID virus as, this pandemic, obviously, that made us sit back, stay home, realize how our relationships with others were impacted positively or negatively, depending upon what we did to each other. Broke a lot of bad habits, broke a lot of things, out of our normal life. And for the first time, we were actually able to see the other pandemic that has been plaguing us for centuries in the murder of George Floyd. And you couldn't look away. You couldn't say you didn't know, because we had been sequestered for 3 months, and Governor Cuomo, like everybody else, was talking about this virus. We all knew in our communities the reason why we were being so disparately impacted was because of the other virus, the virus that had been
racism, white supremacy.
Exactly, that kept us from healthcare and jobs and housing and quality education, blah, blah. And so it all played out. So, like I said, nobody, you could pretend that you're not seeing this, but you would be living in some very, very dark tunnel. And the governor, rightfully, since he took leadership, and I say, it was a good thing. New York was the epicenter of the coronavirus epidemic, with over 300,000 people with coronavirus. So the fact that he was taking leadership and didn't have mass hysteria was an important thing. But how do you not shift when you saw the other thing? And so I like I said, we're in a place that none of us would ever have thought and we are riding this so that we will right wrongs.
Andrea Stewart-Cousins, how do you feel about the hashtag defund the police?
You know, like I said, I have said, and I think most people are saying, that we have used the police too much in every aspect of our lives. Practically anytime, you know, anything happens, whether it's mental health, whether it's and you know, I had up in Westchester, my district, Kenneth Chamberlain Sr., who was a Marine, retired Marine, mental illness. His medical alert went off, and you know, by mistake. And he said, "No, I don't need you. I don't need the police are there. They're banging on his door. They said, 'Let me in. We have to see you.'" Then they called him the N-word, and you know, he says, "Please don't. You're going to kill me." He got his little kitchen knife, trying to help himself, and before you know it, he was dead. And of course, nobody was counted for that. You know, there's got to be another way that we could deal with somebody who, you know, who's mentally ill, rather than sending somebody with a badge and a gun. So I think that.
So for you, defunding the police, like a lot of people, means taking resources away from this system and reallocating those resources and finding better ways to build new systems exactly right. that can address.
You know, I mean, the reality is that police is like, you know, if all you got is a hammer, everything is a nail. If all you got is a gun and a badge, everything, you know, requires we don't need everything to require a solution with a gun. So, you know, we're at a moment now where we get a chance to rethink it all.
There it is. Andrea Stewart-Cousins, thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
And hopefully when these bills are now official, I see some of the press rolling out. They get signed by the governor this week.
Yes.
There it is.
That's what he says.
Thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great work.